I poured 5 years of 80-hour work weeks into my $85,000 house fund, only to hand over every cent when I was told my mother-in-law was dying from a fatal heart condition. But while she was supposedly under the knife, I found her in a luxury hotel suite, celebrating with a surgeon who was actually her own brother. I'm a forensic accountant. I expose lies for a living. So when I realized her illness was fake, I decided her scam would cost her more than she ever imagined. My name is Clara, and I've spent my entire life looking for a place to belong. I grew up in the foster care system, moving from one temporary house to another, carrying my life in a black trash bag. By the time I aged out, I had one goal: security. I became a forensic accountant because I like that numbers don't lie. People do, but spreadsheets? They have a paper trail. When I met Mark, I thought I'd finally found my anchor. But honestly, it was his mother, Evelyn, who really sold me on the family. She was warm, charismatic, and called me the daughter she never had. For 6 years, I did everything to earn that title. I was the one who remembered her obscure tea preferences, the one who drove her to every minor checkup, and the one who cooked her heart-healthy meals because she complained of palpitations. I worked 80-hour weeks, taking on every grueling audit and messy bankruptcy case that came my way. I was exhausted, but I was motivated. I had a high-yield savings account nicknamed the Foundation. It held exactly $85,412. That was meant to be the down payment on a house with a garden, a place where no one could ever tell me I had to leave. Mark and I were so close to the finish line. I thought I was building a future for us and a safe harbor for Evelyn. I didn't realize I was actually just fattening a pig for the slaughter. I wanted a mother so badly that I ignored the fact that every time I gave, Evelyn took, and she was never, ever full. The night my life changed didn't start with a scream. It started with the sound of a silver fork hitting a porcelain plate. We were at Evelyn's for our usual Sunday roast. I'd spent all afternoon in her kitchen, making sure the gravy was low sodium and the vegetables were steamed just right. Evelyn was mid-sentence, complaining about a neighbor's loud dog when she suddenly gasped. Her hand flew to her chest, her fingers clawing at her silk blouse. I watched, frozen for a split second, as her face went from a healthy pale to a terrifying blotchy gray. She slumped forward, her forehead nearly hitting the mashed potatoes. "Evelyn!" I screamed, lunging across the table. Mark was paralyzed, his face white as a sheet, but my foster care survival instincts kicked in. I was on the floor with her in seconds, checking her pulse, shouting at Mark to call 911. But Evelyn gripped my wrist with surprising strength for someone having a cardiac event. "No!" she wheezed, her eyes fluttering. "No hospital, the wait times, they'll let me die in the hallway, Clara. Call Dr. Thorne." She fumbled a business card out of her pocket. Dr. Eris Thorne, specialist cardiologist. Within 20 minutes, a man in a sharp charcoal suit and a white lab coat arrived at the house. He didn't come in an ambulance, he came in a black SUV. He looked professional, clinical, and utterly unimpressed by the chaos. He spent 10 minutes in the bedroom with Evelyn while Mark and I paced the hallway, clutching each other. When he stepped out, his expression was grim. "It's a failing mitral valve," he said, tucking a stethoscope into his pocket. "It's congenital, and it's critical. She needs an experimental valve replacement. If we go through the public system, the bureaucracy alone will take 6 months. She doesn't have 6 weeks." He looked me dead in the eye. "I have a private surgical suite. I can do it Tuesday, but because it's experimental, insurance won't touch it. It's $85,000, up front." I looked at Mark. He looked at the floor. My heart was pounding in my ears. 85,000, my house, my garden, my entire life's work. Then I heard Evelyn moan from the bedroom, a weak, broken sound. I didn't even hesitate. I thought, what is a house if I let my mother die? I remember the light of the laptop screen hitting my face at 2 a.m. The house was silent except for Evelyn's heavy, labored breathing coming from the guest room. Mark had already fallen into an exhausted sleep, but I was sitting at the kitchen table staring at my savings account dashboard. $85, 412 hours. I had refreshed the page 10 times, as if the numbers would somehow grow if I stared hard enough. With a shaking hand, I initiated the wire transfer to the account Dr. Thorne had provided. My finger hovered over the confirm button for what felt like an eternity. In that one click, 5 years of missed vacations, skipped lunches, and 80-hour weeks vanished. I felt a physical ache in my chest as the balance plummeted to $400. "It's just paper," I whispered to myself, trying to stop the tears. "It's a life. You're buying her life." The next morning, Thorne's SUV arrived. They loaded Evelyn into the back on a reclining chair, claiming she was too unstable for a standard car, but didn't want the trauma of an ambulance sirens. For the next 12 hours, I sat in a sterile waiting room of a small, nondescript private clinic on the edge of town. When Thorne finally emerged, wiping his brow, he gave me a tight smile. "She's a fighter, Clara. The valve is in. She needs total rest now." The 3 weeks that followed were a blur of exhaustion. I took unpaid leave from work, a huge risk for a freelancer, to be her full-time nurse. I bathed her, I changed her linens, and I fed her expensive organic broths. She played the part perfectly, whispering her thanks, clutching my hand and telling me I was her guardian angel. I was surviving on caffeine and the hollow pride of my sacrifice, never realizing that the angel was actually the mark. The house of cards didn't collapse because of a high-level audit. It fell because of a piece of paper the size of a business card. It was a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks into Evelyn's recovery. She had sent me out to get her a very specific brand of herbal tea, and while I was moving her recovery bag to find my car keys, a small slip of paper fluttered out. It was a dry cleaning receipt. I picked it up, expecting it to be months old. My blood went cold. It was dated for the Friday of the week she was supposedly in the ICU. The item? A navy silk cocktail dress. The pickup name? Evelyn Vance. As a forensic accountant, my brain is wired to find the thread and pull. I didn't confront her. I went to my office and opened my laptop. I started with the clinic. I searched the business registration for the Thorne Cardiac Group. It wasn't a medical corporation. It was a shell company registered to a residential address in a neighboring county. I pulled the property records for that address. The owner wasn't a doctor. It was Julian Vane, Evelyn's younger brother, a man she had told me she hadn't spoken to in a decade because of a family feud. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to grip the edge of my desk. I pulled up my GPS history from the day of the surgery. I had dropped her at that clinic, but I realized I'd never actually seen her go into a surgical theater. I'd been led to a private waiting suite in a completely different wing. I decided to follow the money. I saw a recurring charge on Evelyn's shared utility account for a maintenance fee at the Azure Palms Resort, a place 3 hours away. I told Mark I had an emergency client meeting and drove there. I found them at the poolside bistro. Evelyn wasn't in a hospital gown. She was in that navy silk dress, looking radiant, laughing as she clinked a crystal flute of champagne against Julian's glass. Julian, the surgeon, was wearing a Hawaiian shirt. I stood behind a decorative palm, my phone recording everything. I heard her voice, clear and mocking over the sound of the fountain. "Poor Clara," she chuckled, taking a sip of her drink. "She's so desperate for a mother's love. She'd pay for my funeral twice if I asked. That house fund of hers is going to make our retirement very comfortable, Julian. I almost felt bad when she cried while hitting send on that transfer. Almost." The drive home was the quietest 3 hours of my life. Usually when I find a discrepancy in a client's books, I feel a rush of professional adrenaline. This time, I felt like a ghost. But as the miles passed, the heartbreak started to calcify. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I wasn't Clara the foster kid anymore. I was Clara the auditor, and the audit was going to be brutal. I didn't go inside. I sat in my car and opened my laptop tethered to my phone's hotspot. My first move was the medical fraud hotline. Since Evelyn had solicited funds for a medical necessity that didn't exist, using forged credentials from her brother, I filed a formal first-party fraud report with the State Insurance Bureau. I flagged her Social Security number and Julian's name across every major medical network. Next, I used my professional access to contact the compliance departments of the big 3 private hospital chains. I submitted the evidence of the shell company and the forged surgical invoices. I wasn't just reporting a crime, I was creating a digital do not resuscitate order for her financial credibility. Finally, I called my lawyer. "I want to lien on her condo," I said, my voice as cold as ice. "Theft by deception. I have the wire transfer, the fake invoices, and the video of her admitting to the scam. I was going to strip her of the very roof over her head to pay back every cent of my house fund." The end didn't come in a courtroom. It came in a crowded ER hallway. 14 months after I seized Evelyn's condo and divorced Mark, she actually got sick. A severe, agonizing gallbladder infection. She rushed to the Elite Wellness Center, the private hospital she'd always bragged about. But the moment they swiped her ID, a fraudulent history flag turned the screen red. Because of my reports, they demanded a $50,000 cash deposit up front. She had nothing. She ended up at the county hospital waiting 14 hours on a plastic chair while the common people she despised walked past her. I got my $85,000 back, plus interest. I finally bought my house with the garden. And the best part? The gate has a lock that Evelyn will never have the key to. What a chilling reminder of how easily trust can be weaponized by the people I once considered family. But now I want to hear from you. Did I go too far with my calculated revenge, or was the betrayal so deep that I deserved to take everything back? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Please keep in mind that the story you just witnessed was a fictional dramatization created for the purpose of societal reform and awareness. I share these intense scenarios to highlight the dark realities of financial and emotional abuse so you can protect yourself and, more importantly, so these toxic cycles are never repeated in real life. Let this be a lesson. Karma has a way of balancing the books, but integrity is something no one can ever buy back once it's gone. If you found value in this lesson today, please subscribe and hit that bell icon to join our community for more daily stories of justice.